of San Francisco BNI Alumni Chapter. Been active since about 4 years, and we've done about 40 odd events. The principle has been threefold. The pillars are three: connect, collaborate, and inspire. Not only will we be connecting within different schools and all over the world, we also have our friends from Australia and our friends in Cleveland. I see Debbie, who's the incoming president of the Alumni Chapter out in Cleveland, and our folks joining fairly late in the night we're very thankful for you, Debbie. We have another friend of Alden, Christopher, also joining us from Pittsburgh, plus a whole bunch of folks I don't know personally, but again, thanks. So the connection is geographically as well as and connect them. And we had events where they were simultaneously done here, and people logged in from Japan, China, India, of course, even as close as San Francisco, based on the traffic and everything else. So the objective is to connect, and we'll start speaking, and maybe as things will start rolling out for what they are. Not only within our schools, but we also reached out to other universities, Cornell, Stanford, Kellogg, MIT, Kellogg, Harvard. So the objective was that we realize that the knowledge is not confined. CMU is, of course, one of the best schools. So we extend that, and I've seen personally that most of the happy hours, we get more people coming in, at least 15 to 20%. Strangely, they want to meet other people other than their own friends too, which was interesting. We had companies sponsoring such events. We had Pocket Gems out in San Francisco doing it twice. They want us to organize more, but we said we didn't want to extend the hospitality, free food, free wine in San Francisco, where we had to pay and do a lot of things. So that shows the value of the alumni. We have another event coming up on July 31st at Palo Alto. Medallia is a company where they want to spread the message. So if you have any speakers you want to listen to, or you want to speak, or you want to get together at some place, please tell us. This is all our community, and we'll grow that as well as grow with us. With it, the inspiration, of course, one example today is Alden, where we are again blessed to be in Silicon Valley, where people look up to. It's not often that people come out of their offices in the middle of the day at Tokyo to listen to us. And we have Professor Stewart getting Emirates to come and do a hackathon here with the top of the chief CTO coming in. So the amount of involvement companies around the world, individuals around the world do, is because they know what we interact every day with. Great companies, we have Apple and a lot of others coming in, where we are creating the future, and others would like to learn from us. And we would like to share too. So that was the purpose behind the Gateway series. Saying we started with Silicon Valley, we have excellent facility here, but going forward, we would probably have someone from New York, someone from Pittsburgh, and other parts of the world logging in, doing a panel or something else. Inspiration, of course, is connected with this. We had first series was Prasad of Google. He was the HR head, VP Analytics. He's a very introvert person. He doesn't share things. He's also on the compensation committee. So we couldn't record anything on his request. But there were a lot of conversations happen, which doesn't happen even. I mean, happens in certain corridors, but not publicly. So that information is valuable to not only get inspired, but to do what we want to do in our lives. So these are some of the underlying themes which we did. Our focus has been in doing even happy hours to collaborate, such technical conversations, sports-related events. So, and again, we have events from different schools being done. CS is doing an event on 12th at Computer History Museum. There was a huge event, about 500 people last year at Exploratorium in San Francisco. Heinz is doing one in July, and the campus will do a big tech show and an alumni event in August. So please check out. Do join us. Any ideas, suggestion, we'll get going. And if you want to take something and run with that, we are all there to support and inspire. Coming to today's event, We are lucky to have Professor Stuart Evans with us. He has taught quite a few of us here, and not only here, but in Pittsburgh and Adelaide, and simultaneously in many cases too. Wide experiences in consulting, management, investing, of course, coaching and mentoring too. The list is too long for me to say, and he's modest to not hold on to that. And our guest speaker today, Alden, is equally impressive. U.S. Navy SEAL. I'm very particular not mentioning Marines. He is someone who has overcome and had embodied the unstoppable things from a very young age. And I hear from friends that he came out of the Navy SEAL after leading his team on a Friday and joined Tepper at Pittsburgh on Monday without a break at all. And then he continued to excel there. Whenever he was in a spot from Changes Everything, his teammates were inspired by the Alden Mills way. And he said the energy in the room or the teams where he was contagious beyond comparison. There are too many laurels in the Tepper areas I was speaking to, and some people are already on the chat who could speak more about that. He also had changed his track and connected with another good friend of ours, Bart O'Brien, who owns O'Brien Farms in Napa. With his conversations, and also with his own zeal, he started fitness. Became an entrepreneur in the fitness space and grew it with its related challenges of things not working out, and again working very well. And now he's exited it happily and lives in Marin with his 4 strong children and a very mentoring father. The inspiration aspect was well, I have a 6-year-old. We were in the weekend. I was looking up to read up on the other thing, and she got inspired by looking at your push-up things. And I took her on a lot of hikes in very arduous places, but we do every day now coaching the alligators, push-ups, and other things. So
I love that.
Yeah. So someone who doesn't know, I always look at testimony of Apple and other products where, without anything, kids at 2 years or even younger pick up the products and start using it without any coaching. Likewise, inspiration also comes without anything. Alden, we are thankful for joining us, and I'll leave the conversation. We look forward to your conversation with Dr. Evans. And a question to and logistics are: we have 3 little swags, a small booklet with all the achievements of CMU outside. This is all yours. Lloyd Scott pins and stickers, and water is there. Please help yourself, along with tea and coffee. On the systems there, when you press the middle, the camera focuses on you when you ask the question, and you can do that right at the beginning too. But if you're particular about not be seen on the YouTube and that will be captured, don't press it. Thanks again, and look forward to an entertaining and very informative evening.
Thank you, Krishna. That was very kind of you to introduce us all this way, and it's really nice for everybody to get together, and we're so happy that you're here with us today, Alden. It's really nice to have somebody that's achieved something against the odds, because we haven't met too much to talk about your background, but from what I've read, when you were quite little, your doctors said that you were never going to do anything in fitness and you should better take it easy and stuff like that. So how at that early age did you have the tenacity and enthusiasm to say, I'm going to show?
It's a story, and I'll tell a story. But before I tell the story, I want to say hello to my classmates. I think I know who that Chris is out there in Pittsburgh. Anybody out in Cleveland, thank you for tuning in. And I hope you guys will be there in 2015 for our 15 reunion. As John Sangenberger wanted me to make sure we get that out.
Well, that's a great thing to do, and it's great. One of the things that's nice about this campus is that we want to be a home from home. So we hope that you're going to be a frequent visitor from now, and if any of your friends in the area, let us know, and we can do some stuff here.
Well, thank you, and it's really Krishna that made it all happen. So thank you, Krishna, on that. So the story, I just gave a talk about this the other day. And the talk was about the 3 things in life that you can control. And everybody gets focused on everything else that you can't control. And of course, when I was a young, sickly kid, I was focused on the mere fact that I couldn't go out and play because my lungs just weren't that great. And what ends up happening is on these three things you control, I call them dreams, actions, and attitude. And dreams are the things that get limits put on you, right? And the story starts with, this is the first time I really remember a limit being placed on me. And I was ready to accept it. And it was going in to see this pulmonary specialist because I had had pneumonia about a dozen times. My mom was asthmatic, and we went in to this doctor who we waited and waited to see, and he was the one that was going to solve the problems. And so he handed me this tube, and I'm like flowing into it and trying to keep the tennis ball right in, a little ping pong ball in there, and I couldn't do it. And at the end of it, he sat down, and my mom is sitting right there next to me, and he looks just at her, doesn't look at me, and he says, "Now, Mrs. Mills, your son has asthma, and he needs to have a less active lifestyle and play the game of chess." And like at that moment, I like just started to cry. And my mom took me outside. I was like, "I don't know how to play chess. What?" And so I sat out in the lobby. My mom said, "Oh, you go wait down in the lobby. I'll finish talking to the doctor." And she came out, and she had these fingernails that I swear she sharpened them every day. And she came out, and she grabbed my arm, and the first thing she said is, "Well, we're not visiting that doctor again." Good for her. And then the second thing she said is what stuck with me was, don't let anybody define what you can or can't do. You have to define it. Mm-hmm. And I still didn't kind of grasp it at 12, but by the time I was 16, I think I got it. Yeah. And she just kept saying, like, look, if that's what you want to go do, if you want to go hunt frogs and snakes, then go outside and do it. Yeah. And it's going to be up to you. And
there's consequences, but you understand the
consequences. Right. And it's you've got to take control. Yeah. And so that was the kind of first time when you were referencing that really stuck with me, and that became really a theme throughout my life.
And do you think that's kind of like the sort of early kernel of the DNA of an entrepreneur, which is kind of this, oftentimes you see entrepreneurs have this "I'm going to show you" kind of thing.
That's right.
I mean, it's a stronger motivation as any other I've seen. And I used to play a lot of squash when I was younger. Yep. And one of my heroes is a guy called Jahangir Khan, who was a world champion for a while, and he had a similar problem. He wasn't allowed to play squash when he was 8 or 9, even though all his family played. Mm-hmm. And so in Pakistan, where he was from, it's very hot, and everybody sleeps at lunchtime, for siesta. And he used to sneak out of the house, go up to the roof, and bang the ball against the wall. Nobody knew this. And he gradually gets stronger, and stronger. And it just gave him that ability. And I think the ability to bounce back, and the ability to kind of say, "I'm going to really show you," to me, seems to be like one of the principal components of successful entrepreneurs. And you obviously refined that over time. What did you do to get around that? I mean, you got a sports scholarship.
Yeah, and so it's interesting bringing up your example of that champion squash player. For me, it was all about understanding why I wanted to do something. Mm-hmm. I suppose maybe I would have been a great chess player if I really loved chess, but I barely have learned the game.
Now our Carnegie Mellon computer scientists are loose. I don't think there's any competition anymore.
No game there. But I think the first part of anything you want to go after, like when I was 12, I didn't dream of being a Navy SEAL. But by the time I had gone through rowing, because that gave me enough courage to try out for the sport of rowing, which, by the way, is not nearly as complex as the game of squash. Like, not that coordinated.
It's equally arduous. So in fact,
it's a suffering game.
Rowing is the number one aerobic sport. Squash is number 2.
Is it really?
Yes.
Well, it's a lot more hand-eye coordination than squash.
It's all technique.
Sit on the ass technique.
It's not rowing, it's technique.
It is. But it's about understanding why you want to do something. Like, when I wrote the book Be Unstoppable, it was about, first, you got to understand your why. Like, why do you want to do what you do? And I run into people all the time, they want to start a business, and they'll say, "Oh, yeah, well, I really want to have a Ferrari, so I'm going to start a business." Like, well, that's a terrible idea, because you're not going to last very long. But I think the really powerful ones can be like, because I want to show the world I can do it. I want to change the world. I want to do something that it's really bothered me, and I want to make sure that kids grow up knowing that they can do anything they want. And I think that kind of thing, that why, will power you through those
and that really is consistent with what Andrew Carnegie really kind of tried to give everybody, the idea that, look, you have got the power to do that. He tried very much to encourage people through education to come to that goal. But I mean, he was of that ilk too. I mean, he searched for a long time. He swept the floors, and he gradually figured out the Bessemer process in Scotland was going to be really valuable over here. So he used his brains and his initiative. And I think that's the kind of key thing.
No, that's a great point. It is. And it's about just first letting everybody know, like, hey, it's up to you. You have enough of the skill sets out there. If you can take control of the things that we can control, then you're going to be on a path to greatness.
Well, and if you fail along the way, at least you've failed trying.
I think failure is absolutely paramount. Like, to me, I tell everybody on my team, fail fast. Fail as fast and fail as often. Just make sure that we learn from every failure we do.
No,
I have failed way more than I've succeeded. And I think there's this attitude out there for some people that, oh, I've never failed, I've never fired anybody. Oh, bankruptcy, I've never looked at that. I mean, I've looked at bankruptcy 3 times in the face. I've had to fire people. I've had to lay people off. I mean, I'm definitely not perfect.
Well, I teach entrepreneurship here, and I'm sure my students who are sitting in the audience will confirm, every successful company in the Valley goes through at least a dozen near-death incidents.
Yeah.
And it's in those incidents where you actually gain the strength and you adapt in the moment because you have to, and you figure out a way of doing things.
That's right.
It's not given to you. It's not there. It's not outside.
And you get stronger from every time you fail. From every time you see something, you're like, oh, I thought it was this way. This is what the business plan. Business plans are great, but they're about as good as the paper they're written on until you start the process. And then you start to realize what the customer really wanted. It's like, okay, I guess they didn't want what I wanted.
But that's the key thing.
But
it's satisfying customers.
That's right.
You've got to want to do that.
That's right.
And that's something we should explore a little bit. But let me go back to your background. So you started rowing, you started getting stronger, you finished in high school, and did you go to join the SEALs after your undergraduate?
I did, and I got recruited from rowing to go to the Naval Academy and rowed my way through the Naval Academy, and then joined SEAL team after a failed summer trying out for the Olympic team in rowing, and started SEAL training in September of '91.
Wow, that's quite a contrast. I mean, again, you got this issue where you tried for the top.
Yeah.
Realized that there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of really strong kind of people committed. I mean, it's the same in business. When you go out in business, it's not like you're on your own anymore. You've got to compete against everybody else.
That's right.
And that's tough. And you go to Annapolis?
I did.
So you spent most of the time on the East Coast?
I did. I spent all my time on the East Coast until I went to SEAL training, which is down in Coronado, California, and spent a year and a half living in Coronado. I got injured, rolled back, found out that I had asthma. They were going to kick me out of that, so I almost didn't get through that, and then made it through, and then got sent back to the East Coast for 7 years in the SEALs.
Wow, that's a long tour of you. That's
Best
great.
men's health club on the planet.
Yeah. So how'd you get over your asthma? What did you do to it? You just
I really like to say it was a mind over body thing. However, I still suck at running, so I'm still probably got some asthma there.
I get allergies in the summer because of all the pollen down here. And I didn't realize how bad it was until some friends of ours live by the Embarcadero in the city, and they're away. So they said, "Do you want to stay in our flat while we're away sometime?"
Right.
And so I left Menlo Park, kind of heaving on my chest and like sneezing and stuff like that. I get to the city, and about 20 minutes there, I'm kind of like, "Wow, I'm breathing again. Wow, this is really nice." And you just realize that the environmental factors that can impact that is something that's controllable, as opposed to you feeling like, and you must have had that sort of experience too.
I definitely did. The key thing for me was I had to stop taking the medicine, and they did blood tests on me, and they found the medicine while I was going through SEAL training. I was sneaking medicine on the side after hours, and they ended up doing a blood test, and they caught me.
Did you get hauled in front of them?
I got hauled every different way, and then they had to go through another series of tests, and I was able to squeak by them. Wow. And that just, and I figured, you know what, I got to be honest about myself and to my teammates. I can't be a liability, so I just went cold turkey, and was able to get through the rest of it.
Wow. And that issue never crossed your mind when you were on operations and things like that?
No. After you go through the rest of it, they give you plenty of reasons to believe that you can get through it.
It's pretty rigorous training, I understand.
Yes. I don't need to do it again.
And while you were training, were you doing things like principles of strategy to give you a kind of concept of what you, because you have to adapt on, if you're on a mission, things don't like work out the way you expect them to.
Well, so through the training, the most important first thing they'll tell you in training is focus on taking your next step. And I have to tell you, like going through Hell Week, where they wake you up Sunday night and they keep you up until Friday, and they give you like little patches of 15 or 30 minutes of sleep. And so you get a total of 3.5 hours or 3 hours and 15 minutes for the week. And they just bring these instructors around the clock. Every 8 hours, a new set of instructors comes in. And the thing that starts to get you through is remembering why you wanted to do this in the first place. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people would find a higher power, and they'd be like, you know what? God told me I shouldn't be here. I'm out. And I'm like, okay, well, he hasn't told me that yet. Yeah. But
it must be excruciating by the third day knowing you're going to afford to do it.
It is. And so you start to focus on, okay, you remember why you were there, why you really wanted to do this. And then the second thing was you focus on that one step. Like, okay, I did one step. I can do another one. And I literally got to that point.
That's just all you kind of think.
I'm just focused on the next thing. What's next? In the classic example, we had 2 kids. So we started with like 122 people in our class up. And then by the time you actually culled through them, we had about 66 people class up. And by the time we got to Hell Week, we're at 34. And by the time we finished Hell Week, we're at 18. And that was just the first 6 weeks. You go through 30 weeks of training. So 2 of the guys in our earlier class, they snuck in and they stole the Hell Week schedule. And I think the instructors let it sit out there for them to steal it. And what they ended up doing is these kids walked around and they're like, hey, do you want to see the Hell Week schedule? And we're like, no. I don't want to know anything about it. And the instructors would say, don't focus on anything but what's happening right in front of you. And these kids got totally psyched out because they saw the schedule of everything they were going to do. And they're like, oh, there's no way I can do that. And they quit before they even started.
Yeah.
Because they got so psyched out about all of this work. And I think that is a great parallel to entrepreneurship.
Oh, for sure. In fact, that's why I think many of the venture capital firms now won't invest in anybody that's older than 30 because they know too much about what's in store. And so you wouldn't take the kind of risks that you need to take as an entrepreneur if you're aware of them. Right? It's that some people like that. I mean, I know people that are on their 3rd and 4th company, and they just love that energy you get from going from 0 to $50 million. It's like a real kind of hit,
right?
And they like that. But if you tell people, look, chances are you're gonna fail and lose your money and lose your friends and they don't want to do it. And so your example of the Hell Week
get
schedule,
psyched out way in advance, and they start to go, you know what? I kind of like the corporate job. I'm okay with that. And by the way, that's okay. I don't think everyone needs to be in entrepreneurship, but I think you can take the creative thinking of entrepreneurship and be an entrepreneur in a corporate environment. I think there's always that environment where you can get that creative juices flowing.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally. I think that there's some parallels between being an entrepreneur and doing new kind of innovative projects inside companies. And the parallels, if anything, it's harder to do it inside of a company.
I agree.
But once your company's going, you've got customers, you've got people that need feed,
you've got
payroll to meet, you've got all kind of stuff.
You got guardrails you got to deal with.
I want to get to that in a little while because after you were posted in Bosnia and other places that were pretty severe, and the environment was well. I mean, it's a pretty awful situation to be in. did you learn things about those deployments that they didn't train you for? I mean, what were the sort of takeaways that you got from the missions that you were on?
You know, I think that there are a couple of things they don't teach you right out of the gate. And being an officer, so there were only a couple officers that graduated my time, and so they end up putting you through this. They call it Junior Officer SEAL 101 training, and probably the class was a little smaller than what we have right here, and they bring in all these old crusty officers, and
just like we do now.
Yeah, but I think I wish they made it even more of an impact, but I guess maybe they did, and maybe that's why I followed it so much. But the thing that I really came to depend on the most was appreciating the value of every person on the team. Appreciating the fact that when I walked into a platoon, there were chiefs in there. I had a chief in there, I had a senior chief, I had an LPO, leading petty officer. These two people had about 30 years of combined experience in SEAL team. They had 12 deployments between the two of them. And if I was thinking just because I had 4 years of college that I was going to be a better leader because these guys, just because I had 4 years of college, they would kick me out of the platoon. They would have just said, "Oh no, it's not even working." And I think that's one of the wonderful places about SEAL team is you really get evaluated by your peers, and your peers, even though technically they don't outrank you, they make the decision whether you're going to succeed or not. And that reliability when you go overseas is absolutely paramount. And when you start to really treat people as an equal, as a, hey, we're working together, as a flat hierarchy, even though, yes, on paper, there is a rank hierarchy, that makes all the difference in the world. Because then you go to the other militaries, and we worked with the British SAS, we worked with the Dutch, and the Germans, and the French, and you start to treat them that same way, they're blown away by it. And they'll take you, they're not used to it. And you need to know those guys in motor pool.
But it makes a difference in performance. I mean, you can see that in the business that you created now. I mean, you treat people the same way. I mean, everybody's equally important, and everybody, the receptionist is as important as the VP.
Without question.
That's fundamental understanding.
So that I think was real big takeaway of all deployments, like especially when you worked with other countries.
Well, people you haven't met before, and different cultures, and different ways of doing things, and things like that. So how did the difference? I mean, leaving the SEALs on a Friday and starting at Pittsburgh on a Monday morning must have been quite a culture shock for you in the transition.
That is an understatement. A total understatement. I mean, I literally was jumping out of an airplane the week before, and then I showed up for quantitative skills review. Oh my God!
Linear program.
I mean, are you kidding me? First of all, I wasn't a math
CMU way as well.
Yeah, and it was all longhand. And I mean, I remember I got my calculator. I'm like, I don't even know how to work this thing. This reverse Polish or whatever it was. Well, I turned it back in.
HP one.
It was a real shock. And I just remember, going, what have I done? What have I done? And I had picked CMU because I felt CMU would make me a better business leader. And I knew the basics of leadership, but I didn't know business leadership. And I needed to know how to dot the I's and cross the T's and learn the language, and I was willing to do the grunt work. But it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been intimidating.
It was extremely intimidating.
And then the environment. Did you have any friends there when you first moved in? I mean, did you know any other classmates?
No. Well, you know what? I had a couple of guys from the Naval Academy that were there that we hadn't really seen.
That's good.
But, I mean, I made fast friends with kids from Japan, kids from India, kids that, everybody, I love this statement, and I didn't come up with it, but they say no one gets all 52 cards in the deck. I knew the cards. I was starting to learn the cards that I got dealt. And there were kids there, students, adults, that they got totally different cards than I had. I'm like, I am going to be their friend. And we did that with game, and we ended up winning game. because I was like, oh, there was this great guy from Japan, and we had a terrific kid from India, and we had a lawyer, and we had a great time. But everybody was great at what they did, and we celebrated that. And then I tried to learn from them, and they tried to learn from me.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So 2 years was quite an intense experience,
and it was awesome.
And what were the key takeaways? I mean, the quant methods are really strong and they're really good, and it's good to have that foundation in business. But
I knew enough to get my ass kicked in a bar fight for most all the quantitative skills. So right when I knew there, I knew that the big takeaways were that the same leadership skills that I learned in SEAL Team can be applied in business.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I think there's more of a need for it in business.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, Clausewitz once said in a letter to Scharnhorst, he said, this sounds kind of really simple. He said, battle is money and property. Strategy is commerce. It's through the former that the latter becomes significant.
Oh, I like that. Say that again. I got to remember that one. Say that again.
Clausewitz, for those of you who was the first guy to study military strategy in a scientific way. He was a student of Quant. But his boss was a guy called Scharnhorst, who was the chairman of the Prussian Academy. And in some correspondence, when they were talking about things, Clausewitz said, battle is money and property. Strategy is commerce. It's through the former that the latter becomes significant. So the bottom line of it is, without money and property, commerce doesn't exist.
Right. There is no strategy. That's great. Oh, that's a good one. Thanks for sharing that.
I'm glad to.
I like that.
And I think you're right. There's a commonality between leadership and business and in warfare. There are many parallels that you can draw. The principles of strategy and military strategy are things like concentration of resources at a decisive point, flexibility, and they apply just as well to business as they do. In fact, probably more so now, because in the military things are much more complicated than they ever were when people used to line up against each other and try and walk away at the end of the day. That's a different game. But how did you know that you wanted to go into business, to be an entrepreneur? Did you know in those times that you wanted to go create a new company?
I had kept a sketchbook in SEAL Team of my mom was an art teacher. My dad was a wannabe architect, but he was thrust into a family business. It was a small kind of job shop, miniature screw thread business. And so I grew up going to Frank Lloyd Wright houses on vacation, right? And
just what every teenager always wants to do.
Going to operas, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying over here. But that rubbed off on me. And I would draw, I'd sketch, and I'd be like, man, I'd love to create some widgets. Like I'd see my great-grandfather go to work, and he'd still be working on things, and he was still and so I was always kind of a widget guy. I like the hard, tangible.
That's pretty why you fitted with CMU because we build things. I mean,
that's and saving the world from excess inventory.
There's a lot of that in Silicon Valley.
Sridhar, exactly. I love that guy. But I had, even in SEAL Team, we were still inventing things and coming up with new ideas on things. And I think the thing that really got me excited was being involved with some business that had a higher purpose. I mean, it was real easy in SEAL Team to have a higher purpose. Like when you're going out hunting a bad guy that has killed 60,000 people, you don't have a lot of questions in your mind of what you're going to do.
Yeah, it's pretty crystal clear.
And so, but I needed that same thing. And it took me a while to find that in business.
That's an interesting thing. So you think in addition to the motivation of wanting to create a business, you got to have something behind that that's driving you towards doing it, that puts it into kind of some perspective, that aligns you in a sense.
I did. I mean, and I think you'll hear more and more about purpose with business. My summer was spent at Johnson & Johnson on an internship program. In New Jersey. Skillman, New Jersey. But why did I go there? Because I loved their credo. They have that, and they spent the whole morning teaching you about the credo, right? It's for the nurses. It's for the moms. It's for the doctors. The very bottom for the shareholders.
You got to love serving your customers.
And even though it's a huge corporation and it felt like being in the military in some ways, they do follow that credo, and I think that's very valuable.
Well, I think it's even harder in a bigger company to get that kind of motivation that's shared by all the employees. In a smaller company, you can infuse that yourself. You can kind of say you can pick the people you want to pick, have that sort of motivation. But I think that alignment of need is interesting. But the higher cost is something that I'm interested in more than exploring. So you tried a business that didn't work after you graduated. I mean, that's always a kind of a refreshing experience because you clean a sheet and you're ready to start again.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was a business. I mean, I got hired by a former CMU grad who's, to this day, still my mentor, Bart O'Brien. I love him. And
did you take courses from Don Jones and Art Bonnie in those days?
I took courses from Don Jones, but did Bart? I don't know. He graduated 19 years.
Was not taking, he's the guy.
Bart.
Napa.
Yeah. Bart O'Brien graduated 19 years before.
Okay.
Board of Trustees.
Yeah. And he came into entrepreneurship class to give a lecture, and he's like, "Hey, if anybody wants to kind of carry my bag for a couple of years, I'll make you. I'm going to do this kind of protege." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm in." And so I came out here and worked with him, and then he ended up leaving iSpheres, and I stayed on, and it just felt like, I didn't understand these bits and bytes, and I in a way I felt like we were a technology in search of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, September 11th it occurred, I was back in the reserves, and I was really pulled. I was looking at some other government agencies I got recruited to go to, and I'm like, oh. And then my wife's like, before you go do that, why don't you've always wanted to start a business, why don't you try? And so I left there and then started Perfect Fitness.
And take us through the thought process that you got to Perfect Fitness. I mean, you
definitely didn't start called Perfect Fitness.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
What was your initial sort of hypothesis of what it was you
The
were trying to do?
initial hypothesis is that we were going to do all this terrific technology because I was coming out of technology, and it was all about technology. And we were going to create this widget, and I had 25 pounds of modeling clay on our cutting board, and I had done a fair amount of research in the fitness space, and I went and got a personal training certification because I really wanted to understand the space.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wanted to take this widget and put this 3D accelerometer, MEMS accelerometer inside, and I wanted to connect it to a video game and trick people into working out by playing video games. I thought that'd be a great idea.
10 years too.
But that was 2003. And we started going down the path, and I raised a little money. And then I told people, you know what, it's not working. I tried. I'm like, hey, I'm going to do an infomercial. Then I raised about another $1,300,000. And they were all fired up about the infomercial because that was the quick hit, right? I mean, there's plenty of investors out there to be like, oh, yeah, here's $50K. I can pull that in a weekend. I'll try that for infomercial. And then I spent $1,475,000 learning not how to bring an infomercial product to market. And I was left with that $25,000, and then we launched Perfect Push-Up. And by the way,
so you must have been pretty.
That was 2006.
Yeah, you must have been pretty. I mean, it's a pretty ballsy thing to go burn through all that money, and then what you got left with kind of decide to keep going and see it through. Next steps. Next steps.
Yeah, well, when your father-in-law takes you out on the porch of his summer home, okay, who basically helped bankroll me from the beginning, who played on a Rose Bowl football team for University of Washington, who played against Dick Butkus, and he would bring me out and put his arm around. He put his arm halfway around me and around the base of my neck, and my wife's sitting on the deck, and she's looking at her mom and like, oh, isn't it nice? They're bonding together out on the point. And he goes, hey, I didn't raise my daughter to marry a bleeping aerobics instructor. you got 6 months, pal.
That's enough.
And you're like,
stiffen
whoa,
the spine.
oh
That
man.
stiffens the spine.
Because I was like, well, I got this new product. It's called the Perfect Push-Up. And he's like, let's go for a walk. And so we both agreed. And he's a super supportive guy, and I love him dearly. And
yeah, but that kind of helps, you know.
It did. I was
really
like, okay. He's
focuses
like,
motivation.
you can't keep going. Like, you know, it was 2006. I started in 2002.
Mhm.
So it was really 5 years.
Yeah, it's a long
Counting
time.
out all those days. And I agreed with him, and I said, okay, I'll go until the end of 2006, and if I can't make this product work, then I'll go get a job.
Mm-hmm. And the rest is history.
And the rest was history.
But it's, I mean, we're a customer.
I love it.
Our son,
Not
me, our son.
Oh, well.
I stopped playing squash a long time ago. My sedentary lifestyle is different, but he really enjoyed it. He thought it was great. He loved it. But I think that what your father-in-law kind of did was to sort of summon those reserves up and say, hey, next step, we got something to do in a very limited time.
That's right.
And so in the current Steve Blank's kind of lean startup is kind of prevalent everywhere, and so this notion of pivoting is really fashionable. You have to pivot. You didn't really pivot. You stayed at the same thing, and you iterated till you got to something.
I did, but I probably should have pivoted a lot earlier. I should have seen the writing on the wall. I mean, I was really so in love with that first product, and I was very emotionally attached, and that was definitely a lesson learned. Was I fell in love with it.
Yeah. So you drank the Kool-Aid.
I was drinking Kool-Aid. I couldn't understand why everywhere else would drink Kool-Aid.
And with hindsight, what would have been a good thing to have done at that stage? I mean, how could you have come to the realization yourself that maybe you should have maneuvered in a different direction?
We weren't particularly. I had a teammate, and he was more financially savvy than me, but not a lot. Had we really sat down and done a cash flow analysis and said, hey, this is what it's going to take to make this thing profitable and start making a return for our investors, we would have seen that the units, we needed to add another 0 or 2 to the units. And we were just kept kind of tapping the wheel along. And then we started to realize, like, hey, we got to be selling hundreds of thousands of these. We can't be selling thousands. And,
how are we going to do that?
And then, ironically, I brought in a real CFO. And then he started to extrapolate. He goes, okay, here's our budget. Like, this is what we have to do.
Yeah.
And then once that plan got in place, it kind of like, okay, now I got this.
Yeah, it's a sobering thing when you come in. One of the things that I teach in entrepreneurship is it's so important to understand finance.
It is.
Cash. I mean, at the end of the day, cash is the thing that keeps business going. Without it, you can't.
That's right.
And so you need to understand how to generate it, how to spend it effectively, how to sustain it, how to keep it, when to deploy it, and things like that. And it's something for scientists and engineers that doesn't come natural. You get carried away, just as you're saying. In technology, we've got to produce a perfect thing. It's the coolest product. It's really great. But there's part of that equation that's missing is like, well, what do customers think? Are they going to buy this? Is it something that's appropriate? And so, with hindsight, looking back now, what would you maybe done differently?
The first thing I would have done differently and it was tough because we used this product and it was working with the customers. When they got it, they were like, oh, I love it. But the biggest thing I learned is what I call the 3 I's of improvise. And I'm a huge believer in, improvise, pivot, whatever you want to call it. But the 3 I's, whether you're inventing a software program or a widget, I make a big distinction between an invention, an innovation, and an improvement. And if I had my products up here, I'd hold up the body rev, which is an invention. And it kind of looks like a figure 8 and has these rotating handles and has these green knobs on the top. But if I held it up and showed it to you, I'd say, well, tell me what it is. And you'd be like, I don't know, maybe it works your forearms, maybe you tighten this. But then I go, oh, no, it's a rotating weight system. What does that conjure up in your head? Like 2 dumbbells banging on each other? Like, the problem was it had no reference point. So when I talk about an invention, it has no reference point. You're like the Segway. You see the Segway, and you look at it and go, whoa, that thing shouldn't even work, right? So when you come up with an invention, you have to be prepared to spend a long period of time educating people on what this invention is. And if you're not funded to do that, then someone's going to swoop in after you and go, okay, I got it from here, kid.
Well, nobody's going to fund you to invent things.
Yeah, inventing scares the hell out of people.
It's innovation people want. They want the commercialization.
They want to see something that you've got, like, hey, I got a reference point, a push-up handle, big U-shaped handle, and now I put a rotating plate on it. Oh, well, why do you rotate? Oh, it's like a punch. I engage more muscles, easier on my joints. Navy SEAL. Oh, bam, there was the story right there. If you asked me what the rev was, it would take me at least 60 to 90 seconds to tell you what it is.
But that's exactly what people have to do. It's got to be simple and it's got to be understandable. You know, one of the problems now with innovation in big companies is you can't wait for 5 years for something to happen anymore. And so the clock speed that big companies work at and the clock speed that startups work at are totally different. And the large companies are trying to figure out how to work like small companies. But what you just said is so important that you have to be able to articulate exactly what it is in a common sense way that everybody gets.
That's right.
And it sounds easy. But if you've got to do it in 3 words, it's
very
really hard to do.
It's very, I call it it's like the mission statement reduction sauce. You're just you're just keeping, and I'm not really a cook, but you're just keeping, you're sauteing that thing until it's melted down to the bare bones basics of what it is.
Absolutely.
And to finish on the 3 I's, and the final I is just you're improving something. You know, you had a bottle like this, and now you put some ridges on it so it doesn't slip out of your hands. But you knew it was a bottle, and you knew it was going to hold a liquid, and you know that's just an improvement. Yeah. The innovation would have been like, oh well, this thing's got something on it that allows it to stay cooler. It's wrapped in metal now. Like, okay, there's an innovation. You know, the invention would be like, well, I'm taking air and I'm going to make it drinkable. How are you going to do that? You know, that takes a long time to talk about that.
That's interesting because, you know, most of the students on this campus are all in the engineering club. They are all in the engineering college. And so we're all fascinated by technology. And when you talk about building a business around technology, the technology component is not the biggest part. I mean, it's a scale. So, you know, as you hit success with a push-up device, how did the company kind of evolve from there? I mean, how many employees did you have? How did the sales kind of change?
Well, so the company was very unusual in that regard. In that, in 2006, we had 425,000 in revenue. In 2007, we had 32 million. And
that's a vertical takeoff.
It is too much of a takeoff, to be honest with you.
Well, you're running crazy.
So there's a whole nother lesson learned on going from that to that.
Yeah, I'd like to focus on that a little bit because, you know, most of the time when people take courses in entrepreneurship, the entire focus is coming up with that deck of what it is that you're going to do. That's the easy part.
Yeah.
So even when you're successful, it's hard to do. I mean, how did you hire people to take care of that? How did you get the product out? How did you build product with that kind of demand?
You know, the first thing we did was we relied completely on partners because you had to decide, okay, well, what kind of business are we building? Are we building a business that could build a warehouse and hire forklift drivers and people that can pick and pack? You know, what do our core competencies want to be? And I was thinking, I'm not getting in the warehousing space, especially around San Francisco. I mean, there's no way we could do that. So our focus had always been on the innovation side, the product innovation and the marketing, being able to tell the story on there. So that was kind of focus number one. So then anytime I was like, okay, we're going to a third-party logistics house. We're going to a call center. We're going to go do the payment processing. We're outsourcing everything we could. And yes, it was a hit to the bottom line, but you know, when you have that kind of growth,
how long was the lead time to take? I mean, you couldn't have put things in place to deal with that kind of growth.
We outstripped the 3PLs by the end of that year, but you didn't quite know it until you got into the end of the second year when we got to about 65 million in revenue. And then the wheels came off.
And did you see it coming?
You started to see a little of it, especially, remember, that's 2008. So by the time you got to fall of 2008, we got a new line of credit for $15 million. And 6 months after that, I was ushered into workout in the special assets division, which, if anybody knows anything about banking, that is not a fun place to be. It's not like you're going to do push-ups. And I was like, oh, we're going to do push-ups? And I was living in Marin, and I was commuting to San Jose, sitting there to plead my case not to call this loan because they would have personally bankrupt me. They would have sold every asset I own. When they say they called a loan.
10 cents on the dollar.
Oh, yeah. And they were just like, they were prepared. We had, out of the $15 million line, we had 8.8 outstanding. And, just put yourself in this mindset. Right after that, we had just been voted the 4th fastest growing company in the country, the fastest growing consumer products company. Inc. 500 was calling us all everywhere. Everybody thought we were superheroes. And I'm just like, I can't do any interviews right now because I'm about to lose my company.
Yeah.
And, nobody wanted to invest. We were about to close this huge deal, and then all private equity shut down. It was a horrible time period.
Yeah.
But
we've all forgotten about it now. But it was a massive.
Oh.
Anybody? Yeah, I know
horrible.
the feeling well.
The IRS showed up at our house when you start having $1 million tax bills because we were an LLC and it was all passed through. They showed up early, and my wife was at the house, and it wasn't me. And he just showed up to introduce himself, to say, hey,
just in case you got any issues,
just in case you have any questions, we're looking to see your first payment.
We're looking forward to payments.
Yeah. And, we never shortchanged the IRS. We paid back the line in full. Yeah. It took more time, and we convinced them to be patient enough because they were willing to write off at least 50% of it. Yeah. But that would have just personally ruined everybody.
Yeah. No. One of the situations that I came across early on in the valley here, a friend of mine had a company, and he managed to convert all his venture capital to inventory, which wasn't a good idea because nobody wanted the product. And so he had to figure out how to get out of that little bind. And he had paid all of his creditors in 30 days prior to this problem. And so when he faced this kind of precipice of almost going out of business, he went around to each one and said, hey, look, I've got a problem. I paid you 30 days. How about you give me 65, 70 days? I'll pay it. And this ability to kind of work with people in good faith in difficult situations is really very important.
It is so critical. And I think, we all took the classes at Carnegie Mellon. They talk about integrity, and they talk about, doing what you say you're going to do, and having true business practices of honor. And it was so second nature. Like, of course, why would I ever do that? And I was having that mindset when you go meet to these banks. At the end of the day, they did look at the person, and they brought in consultants, and the consultants spent time with us, and we brought consultants in. And the consultants all they wanted to know was, are you going to do what you say you're going to do? Because if you're going to do what you say you're going to do, we'll give you 180 days. Yeah. But if you have a background of skipping on your mortgage, outstanding credit card debt, and blowing it off, and they went through everything. I was totally naked at that point. Yep. Not an attractive thought, by the way. And they
not because you used all your products yourself. There you go.
Yeah, but then at the end of the day, it came down to the reputation of the individual person.
I see. Yeah. And you passed that test, obviously, and went through.
We did.
So,
but they still put us through hell.
Well, and the market must have gone away. Nobody had any cash 2009.
No, it's terrible.
And the last thing you put food on the table before you put fitness gear in the
absolutely, yeah.
That's what you do with your
kids.
It's
expendable.
And so how did you get things going again? Did you just see it through?
So, we saw it through, but just so you have appreciation, we went from 65 to 19 million.
So all the gear in and everything.
We totally off TV, couldn't do anything. Retailers were wanting to put stuff back on us because we couldn't spend when we can't spend. Inventory's backed up. all kinds of inventory coming over from China. We
You
got
can't
through that
stop it,
year.
you turn it on.
No, you can't just shut the wicket off. I mean, you got 150 days of a cash flow cycle that's working.
Especially when the stuff's on the water.
Yeah. So we, after we lost our bank, we got a distributor about 60 days before we were going to go bankrupt, round 2. And the distributor started working great. We went from 19 to about 30 million in sales.
Wow.
And we're like, all right, we're back on track. Well, the distributor was not doing too well. And they were private equity owned. And we started becoming 55% of their retail side. And then they stopped paying us. They had our AR, our accounts receivable. And now we could say, okay, wait a minute. They're not paying us. If they don't pay us for 6 months, we're done. And they're gonna bankrupt us and they can buy us for pennies on the dollar. So at the 11th hour, we found a loophole in the contract and we sold the business to get out from underneath them. And then about 30 days later, they went bankrupt. And the private equity firm just shut it down and sold off the assets.
Wow. And so you sold the business?
I sold the business, lock, stock, and barrel. Wow. And then we got out from underneath it, and now it couldn't be better. It's growing at a very great, consistent rate.
Mm-hmm.
I
and
still
did a private
run
equity
the
company
fitness.
buy it?
The company that bought it is 100% private equity company owned. They've been owned by multiple private equity, and they are very focused on operations. So they're out of North Carolina, and they have the warehouses. And they are very methodical about how we bring out product. And they've really taught me a lot about the operational excellence that you need to deal with retailers around the world.
Now, this is really great because I think a lot of people sort of think of private equity as sort of like just out there to fleece people because they've got cash to invest and but it's an art. And it's a very difficult thing to do, to make money in the short term and keep it coming.
I'm sure there are private equity teams out there that might do that, but the ones that I've really run into, they have to care because their ass is on the line.
Exactly. And
their reputation is.
Most of them are LPs and have the
and
money.
it is. And they need you. They want you to succeed because if you don't succeed, they don't succeed.
Absolutely. So you then took a role in not as an owner, but as an employee of the company.
That's right.
And
so I run their fitness division, and they have 3 divisions, and they've allowed us to maintain our operations out here, and we just bought another company that we're bringing into Perfect Fitness, and we're looking at other ones.
Oh, that's great. So
now I'm more of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Is
it different? I mean,
you know what? One way it is, I don't have the stress that I had. And I will tell you, and this is a true confession. When I was watching my business slip away the 3rd time around with this distributor, I was on vacation back at my father-in-law's house, and I'm taking these calls, and I'm hearing it from my CFO. He's like, Alden, we got 28 days, and we're done. And we're starting to talk to bankruptcy lawyers. And it's so maddening to think that you have no control over this distributor, and you talk to the CEO, and he'd go, oh, yeah, buddy, it's coming. I'm going to get you some more money right away. And I started having pressure on my chest, and my left arm started to go numb. And it was like, I can't catch a breath. And here's Mr. Tough Guy, right? And I'm going, jeez, what is going on here? I must have a
wife
cramp.
and kids as well. Yeah,
but this was the time. I didn't have that when I was losing with the bank because I knew I had control there. I had no control over this. And let me tell you, if you ever want to see a doctor really fast, tell them you feel like somebody's stepping on your chest and your left arm's going down.
Yeah, that's an immediate signal.
But that was, that's when they say like stress kills. Like I could see that.
Yeah, it does.
42 years old, and that was happening.
Yeah. And so, in this new role that you've got, it's almost like, I mean, I'm sure you still got some equity in the business too, so keep you motivated that way. That's one of the ways that private equity firms do it. But they concentrate much more on the next steps. They're not that worried about the 5-year future. It's what the EBITDA is going to be this year and continue to be. It's a focus.
Yeah, you know, it is interesting. So I'm obviously very focused now on the bottom line. It is all about the EBITDA. It is all about the inventory. It is all about the overall company EBITDA. But recently, the private equity firm had me come in and present a 5-year strategy, because private equity firms, they look to hold an asset, a business, for 5 to 7 years. They may get out as early as 3, but you know they want to see a 2 or 3 times return. Yeah. They're not looking like venture capitalists where they want 1,000 points return. And so they want to know, like, okay, if you're running this division, how are you thinking? Show me what 5 years looks like, because they'll probably be out 3 years into that, but they want to be able to show
sell the future.
That you can sell the future. But you can't do any of that until you have the property. You know,
about money and
so
property.
They didn't want to talk to me about 5-year strategy until I had shown 2 years of performance. Okay, this guy can grow something.
And it's credibility to do that. For me, this is a fascinating conversation because, you know, we teach entrepreneurship, about high-tech entrepreneurship, and it's no different. You know, everybody thinks the product sells itself. It doesn't, does it? JP, you've been there. You know what it's like. You know, it's... I have a story. Could you press the button for us, please?
Sure.
And now keep holding it down, or the camera will come off you.
Okay. I have a story to share from Ellie. So, just to fill in the audience, I started a company called Speak With Me. So I worked with Alden and Icer summer 2000. I'm back to CMU fall 2001. Got a speech bug. We built this thing called a natural language dialogue system. We basically were a client-side Siri. Now that Siri is known by people. And so no network connectivity needed. So we built a top-ton GPS. Spent 2 years, $1.1 million of our funding building it. I was in love with the product. Finished it September 14th, 2009. I was supposed to present at TechCrunch Disrupt September 15th. I had to go to Amsterdam to close the deal. And then 2 weeks after we closed the deal, Google gives away navigation for free on Android. TomTom's stock price drops 25% in 1 day. And they drop the price they're going to pay us by 80%. So it goes from a contract that's going to make us $12 million a year to negative $500,000 a year. Just because the language support costs are too high. Ducked our tails. And we actually hibernated the company for 3 years. And we was like, okay, the market has not shown us it's ready yet. And we thought it would be ready when Siri shipped. And I remember having a conversation with Tom Gruber, the founder of Siri, at a birthday party, like, I need you to ship next week. Please ship next week so I can get out of this patent shit work that I'm doing as a day job. And he's like, okay. So they shipped. Market still wasn't ready yet. A year after Siri shipped, Toyota's knocking on our door like, hi, we don't understand how to integrate Siri with the client-side voice system. I'm like, hi, I patented that 2 years ago. Have the answer. And then the auto market woke up, and we got one of them as a customer now. It's not Toyota.
No.
Yeah.
And then
broadcast. I mean,
and then NVIDIA came along. And then NVIDIA came along.
Well, actually, NVIDIA's one of our partners now, and that new Tegra K1 chip is fantastic, and we're soundly positioning ourselves at the high end of the market. And Google and Apple are giving their.
Just for those of you who are not aware, the speech recognition has increased by a 10x improvement because of the ability to compare on GPUs as opposed to use a central processing unit.
I believe Kathy's husband worked on that.
There you go.
Well, right?
Well, we have a group here working on that too, so you please come and
yeah,
share.
Actually,
the
we're working with
it.
another group called Bochi, which is another Carnegie Mellon spin-out, specialized speech chip. And so this operational efficiency that Alden's talking about, we had to deal with the same thing. Most people don't realize that running nuance is
200 times more expensive than running web or database servers. So we stayed away from doing servers. We raised 1/10 of the amount of money of Series. And they were losing $500,000 a month. And they had $500 in their bank account the day they sold to Apple. And that was the only thing they had on the table.
But this operational, I mean, this ability to absorb shocks is something that I can just talk about, and JP, you've talked about it. It's something that happens all the time. You go on vacation, you don't expect to get a call from your CFO saying you've got 28 days. You're about to ship a product, and somebody's kind of like saying, oops, somebody else has shipped it and it's free. Why do we pay for your product? These changes happen all the time. Sometimes these changes are dramatic, like those events. Many times, the changes happen to be just unique conjunctions of things that are singularly unimportant, but the way that they combine together are just, which is what you were describing.
Well, we didn't think Google would be able to map the entire world for about 3 more years, and they hadn't. They just mapped the U.S. That was just enough. It was enough to scare the entire market away. All of the car companies stopped doing any R&D whatsoever from 2009 to 2012. You know, they're all talking about self-driving cars now. That was all. I had a ride in a self-driving car at Carnegie Mellon. It was invented before below me at CMU in 2002. I had that ride. So, you know, it's interesting when we have to go up to customers and be like, yes, you have to pay for the product. Right? It's better user experience. It doesn't invade your privacy. But you know, if you want to go with Google stuff that's free, but you're exchanging your privacy for it, go ahead.
Yeah, that's going to be that's going to be a big thing. It's the same in the fitness business now. I mean, you see all of this wearable technology is becoming all the rage. And
that's right.
And there's a huge kind of, but the business model's not. I mean, I don't see the business model being that strong. Nike pulled out of the business because they didn't know what to do with the data.
They did. Well, we're getting into it.
Yeah, I thought you might be.
So we're launching our first product, the IQ, in September. It's actually our second product. Our first products were failed, but there's opportunity there. Yeah, and I think there is an idea around how to deal with data, and we don't have all the ideas, but the idea of being able to start tracking different key things that are important to you. And I mean, clearly Apple's getting into it.
There's a long distance swimmer at Stanford who's used a heart monitor and kind of Google Glass. So she has now got a display in the swimming goggles to show. Want to get it?
Yeah.
That's there. The folks in the football department are putting sensors in helmets and mouth guards. So when you get hit, they know how much force you took. Oh, should we get this kind of thing? I think there's a whole wave of opportunity in that space, which is really exciting to have.
I agree.
But, I don't want to monopolize Alden because he's got some great wisdom. And have we got any questions, Christian? Do you want me to come and
People are happy that you mentioned your architecture or architected your models.
They what?
Architecting your models.
You
model clay.
And your father was also obvious. But the question, there were two. One was about, it says education seems to be definitely the key. But how can a little guy educate millions on a shoestring?
How can a little guy get educated on a
educate the population? His customer. You mentioned that there was a time when you were going back.
Right.
Stage.
So I think I understand the question. So you
don't
have a lot of money. Like when I had the $25,000 left to go, how do you bring that product to market? I think today is so much easier in some ways to bring a product to market on a shoestring budget than it was 5 or 10 years ago. And what I'm talking about is the social media revolution that's going on with all the different touch points from Twitter to LinkedIn to Facebook to Instagram to Pinterest to YouTube to Tumblr. I mean, there's almost so much of it that you really just have to define what it is you want to do. But at the end of the day, if you have defined what the problem is that you're going after, if you know the problem and you can very acutely articulate that problem, push-up, rotates like a punch, invented by a Navy SEAL, engages more muscles, then you've got the baseline to tweet from. If you can tweet this in 140 characters or less and do it in fun, different ways, then you've got a media platform to launch a product with. If you can't tweet it, you really need to be thinking about, okay, what is my product? What is my service? What is the thing that I'm trying to do?
No, that's so important because oftentimes with technology products, we get carried away.
Yeah.
You know, and if you take us out of the microcosm of Silicon Valley and plonk us somewhere, you know, in the Midwest, and then you start talking, people look at you like, you know, which planet have you just dropped in from? And they're the people that ought to be able to understand it very quickly. And that's the kind of thing that you need to do. Is it's a sanity check. It's hard to get things simple.
It is, and just to finish on that. The way we launched Perfect Push-Up was I had $25,000 left. I had a product development expert. He basically worked for stock, so I could take $5,000 and use it as my media budget. And I bought a tombstone ad, which is a business card size, about that big, in the back of Outside Magazine, one in Men's Journal, and one in Men's Fitness. They cost between $900 and $1,400. That, and I had a website. And that was it. And that was 1 month. And they gave me a discount. I worked every angle I could, but I could only do that 1 month. And I waited. And then I teamed up with a home catalog called the Harrington Catalog, and they did this big drop. And they ended up buying our first round of product. But that was all we had. Twitter wasn't going then. I didn't have a Facebook page. I didn't have a blog. So today you can be even smarter about how to get the product out there. But you need to be thinking ground-based. It's not like I'm Chevrolet and I'm going to go buy $150 million of media in my first month and see what happens. Or launch my company on a Super Bowl ad.
Or hire a big sales force to put leather on the ground and just eat all the cash away.
You have to be willing to do all that.
Yeah. Donna asks, does he have a specific diet regime?
A diet regime. Yes. I love ice cream. I love pizza. I love beer. I eat it all in moderation.
Just like
I try and drink beer in moderation. I do have a bit of a specific diet, and diet to me is a lifestyle thing. It's not, I don't believe in diets. I don't believe in, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to do this. I do try and watch how many carbs I eat. I do try and actually eat more vegetables. I know it's kind of weird. I used to not do that.
7 a day.
And I try and have more fruits, and I don't drink soda. But I do drink beer.
Good word.
Our friend Chris has, which will probably give us a good segue. Alden has a great story, and his life's path is both fascinating and clearly time-consuming. What motivated him to take the time and effort to write a book?
What was the last piece on how to write a book?
What motivated
Why did you do it?
To take time and efforts to write a book?
To write the book. What motivated me to write the book is, for you parents out there, you'll understand what I'm already talking about. But if you haven't had children yet, it's a defining moment in your life. And in my early days in SEAL team as a platoon commander, the other thing they don't teach you is right before you go, you have to write a just-in-case letter. And a just-in-case letter is if you come home on your shield, the commanding officer wants to be able to present something to your loved ones that's something more than just the flag. At the time, I didn't think much of it. It was saying sorry to my brother for throwing a rock at his head. But the key message was telling my parents, hey, I died doing what I loved. And how many people can say that? And then I didn't think about it much. But then in early 2000s, my friends were coming back on their shield. And they had to write a just-in-case letter to their kids. And so that kind of stuck with me. And then I started having children, and we had 4 of them. And I started wondering, like, whoa, what would I write? What would I say? And so that started down this path. That was 2003 when Henry was born, that I really started asking myself that. And then after about 5 years, I think I had figured out what I wanted to write. And it, to me, was the key to all of life. And it's not giving up. It's not giving up on what you care about. It's not giving up on your dreams. It's not giving up on what you believe in. And how do you stick with it? And how do you teach children to do it? How do you teach the next generation to do it? And so then I spent a couple more years breaking it apart, and I came up with what I thought was the code to persistence that I call the Master and Commander's Code in the book, but I created it in a parable format. So if I were to give you an elevator pitch, I love movie pitches, I'd say it's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People meets a way better storyline than Who Moved My Cheese. But it's all about, and then I give live samples at the end of each action. But that's what motivated me to write the book. And I wanted my kids to have it at an early age.
You must have spent quite a bit of time with your kids when growing up and seeing them kind of flourish.
Oh, they're still growing up.
Yeah,
let me tell you. Yeah,
how old are they all now?
They're 4, 6, 9, and 11.
Whoa, that's
So the 11-year-old just read it.
Yeah. How did they respond? Was it he or
Henry? Yeah, I've got 4 boys. He really liked it. No, I don't know if he was just asking for an allowance after that, but he really did seem to like it.
Figure that one out. You know, Walter Raleigh did the same thing. That's his son. I've not read the book, but a friend of mine had a copy of it one time. I looked through it. I think it's maybe getting involved in the sea and all kind of. You get a different kind of sense of reality in some senses.
Yeah,
you realize how thin it all is and how easy it is.
Well, it scares the hell out of me that, if one of my boys has a bad day on the soccer field or, I don't know, acting, like Henry wants to act, and some teacher comes up to him and goes, "You're terrible at acting." All of a sudden, he may take that as a limit, just like I could have taken it from the doctor going, "You need to live a less active lifestyle." And I'm not always going to be there for him, and I wanted the kids to have something to go, no, it's up to you. If you want to act, go be a crappy actor for a while and learn from it. And then you'll be a good one.
Yeah. Please.
So, Alden, you watches or so in the game?
Watches.
I can tell so.
I'm sorry for you. I know, watches was way better. We were one of the first classes with watches.
This is something that's Tepper specific here. We don't get this knowledge here. Explain to everybody that's not aware of what the game is.
Yeah, so management game is a team of 5 people or 6 people.
Yeah, 5.
5. And you sell a product. So one person is CFO, one person is CEO,
Marketing.
supply chain, marketing, all that.
Product
and is it like
and you're a board of people.
Is it a simulation of?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's other teams you're competing against, and there's a board that you present to every week for 3 months or 6 months. And
it was a lot of work.
Never mind. But on a serious note, you talked about every person is important in your team, and it's all about the team. And you went through what I call. We are running a company right now. 3 of us are here.
Oh, great.
CMU Alum, 99. So,
come visit, please.
You guys know each other at the same time then?
I seen him in
school,
but I didn't know him back then. I was your senior to him.
Right.
But there were few Vifio moments what Brad Horowitz talks about. Your politics over. Sorry, YouTube. But you had those moments in your company, and it seemed like you internalized a lot of the stress rather than diffuse it to the team.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you cope with? How do you sort of communicate that times are tough, or is it just people just find out on their own? And it looks like you had a big staff, people.
At one point we did have a fairly large staff. I mean, we got up to 35. But remember, companies that are doing 60 million. I mean, they could have 100 plus people, but we were still very outsourced. But even the 35, I had most of them in one room. We had one smaller team down in LA. I did a roundtable I think it was like every Tuesday on here's where we're at, this is what we're dealing with, and I wanted to give everybody as much heads up. And we cut salaries almost immediately once we started figuring out the second time with this distributor, but we wouldn't cut their benefits. And we said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to skimp on salaries. And of course, I mean, I had cut my salary way before everybody else. And for the longest time, I would never pay myself until everybody else got paid. And it was the same with the other partners. Like, we wouldn't pay ourselves until we took care of everybody else's payroll. But then the next thing was, like, we wanted to, because a lot of people were married and they had children, and we're like, hey, we're going to take care of your benefits, okay? For some of them, they could not show up at work 30 days later without a paycheck, and we knew that. And we said, you know, go start looking for a job, because we're going to have to close this down. And I think the more that we communicated with them, the more they wanted to stay.
Yeah.
The more that.
But honest communication.
It was very honest, and I would fly down to LA, I'd sit there and be like, here's what we're dealing with, and it's catastrophic. Yeah. And we had to let them know. And you know, it was, to not do that would be like going out on a SEAL mission and going, oh, they don't have guns, don't worry about it. You know, oh, those things, they bounce off of you.
Yeah.
You know, it would be nuts. So we tried to be as purely authentic as we could.
My second question is, you raised a lot of money from friends and family, it looks like, in the beginning. And
you want a lesson learned on that?
Yeah.
Holy moly.
I've got a crick neck to show you.
Oh.
Did you condition them?
That might have been part of my heart condition.
Yeah.
Did you condition them that you could lose it all? And, you know,
oh, yeah. And they were conditioned the first time around. So the first time around is when we launched the invention, and they watched me go through $1,475,000, right? I got $25K left. And they basically, a lot of them pulled me in like, hey, man, you stuck it out for 5 years. We're really proud of you. But you're embarrassing yourself. Go get a job. I'm like,
get a real job.
Yeah. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
I'm nearly there.
I'm going to do this.
I'm nearly there.
And so then the next time around, when the company took off, I was very quick to pay them all back. So I made them whole. And then I had a few guys that were like, well, where's my return? Because they just got their money back, right? I'm like, okay, well, I'm working on it. So they would start to give them a little return, and then the wheels came off the bus. And many of them were like, I'm kind of playing with the house money, but you were an LLC, so the taxes would start to pass through. And that became a real issue. In the very beginning, when you go to have the kind of growth that we had, it was way less expensive and easier to just stay in LLC and $500,000. Nobody anticipated that we were going to do $32 million in 1 year. And by that point, shifting right away to a C Corp would have had some damaging tax implications for us. So we got stuck, and we had to do it. But then we found a one-time loophole where you can do cash to accrual or accrual to cash accounting, and then we were able to finance our growth through the U.S. government, basically, because we didn't have to pay all the taxes up front.
Yep.
But it was a one-time deal. We could do it.
Yeah, well, it's nice to have those kind of loopholes. Listen, I'm cognizant of the time. Are there any more questions, Christian? I have a final question I want to ask before. I mean, you know, we have 200 students on our campus here, and most of them want to be successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I don't know many that want to fail.
Yeah, well, yeah. But most of them do. I mean, that's the issue. But it's like, you know, it's through failure that you get success.
Yes, it is.
That's
a true failure.
Yeah.
A true, like you threw your heart and soul in it, and you're like, I can't believe I failed.
Yeah. That's honest. You've done everything you possibly could, and then sometimes there's a little glimmer at the end of it where you see a potential to squeeze through the gap between two big mountains, and you just get through it.
That's right.
And then it opens up a whole new range of options, and that's the art, that's the skill. What kind of advice would you give to people setting out from CMU that want to create a new enterprise, build a great company? What kind of things should they be doing that you've learned that would be really helpful? What are the 3 things that they should keep in mind?
Dreams, actions, and attitude. To be brutally honest with you. And when I talk about dreams, I talk about, I love CMU. And I love CMU for all the people I met who are so unbelievably brilliant. And it's just it's a different community than I ever would have associated with if I had never gone there. Yeah. You know, so many SEALs went to Harvard and they went there, but nobody went to CMU. And I'm like, I want to learn what these guys are doing the really hard work. And what I can say is that each and every one of you has an unbelievable dream in there. There's something really big that you aspire that you want to go to. You have to be able to not listen to what other people are telling you and really define your own limits. And once you do that, then it comes down to actions and attitude. The actions of, hey, what can your body really sustain? Like, how much work can you really do? And what are you really good at? And go find other people that are really good at what you're not good at, and being truly honest with yourself. And the attitude piece is being able to take every failure and spin it as a positive. Spin it as, hey, I learned another way not to make the light bulb. What did Edison say? Like, I learned 5,000 ways not to make the light bulb. Yeah, exactly. And if you stop getting focused on all the noise out there and just stay focused on, hey, I can do this. And it's not done in a day. It's not looking at a Hell Week schedule and going, oh my God, I can never do all this because these guys had to go through all that. Just, what do I got to do today? Define that plan, divide it up, and do it daily. Just chip away at it. And the only way you'll stick with it is because you're really fired up about the why, about why you get up to go do it. We're only here for a short period of time, so go out there and kick ass. Got nothing else better to do. Except maybe have a beer at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Is there beer at the end of this?
There's a Tide House across the street. Yeah. And there's a German place right opposite too now. It's just Stein's. Sorry, we shouldn't be talking about CMU. We need.
Yeah, what are we talking? What are we talking? There's beers at CMU.
No. We need chaperones now. They've gone through a program before we were allowed to have.
Oh, I see.
We could have advised
HR violations. There you go. Hey, Jay.
There you go. Well, I think on that note, we should really start to. This has been a fascinating conversation because we've learned the power of fortitude and staying with something. And when the dark clouds are all around and it looks like the lights are going out, they turn on again. And they turn on again because of that inner character that says, what's the next step? What am I going to do here? How can I do it differently? I've seen the movie before. I know how can I do something positive? And it's how you turn adversity into advantage. That's really the essence of what I think we've been saying. And quite frankly, I really wish you'd come and speak to our students here about entrepreneurship because I think they'd learn an awful lot. We get so carried away with Hadoop and clusters and speech chips and stuff like that. We don't realize at the end of the day, people are people. People are doing things with them. And I think you've brought us down to a level of just reality. And for that, I thank you. And I know everybody that's in Australia, in Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, and folks all here. This has been a great lesson. And I thank you all for joining us tonight. Krishna, thank you very much for putting this all together. And it's been a blast. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Really.
I really enjoyed it.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
As all your
thanks for your time, guys.
as everyone says, you got us fired up.
Hey,
That's what you need to be.
Don't forget, it's darkest before dawn. I love your idea about I love the metaphor of the darkest clouds coming over. Don't forget, darkest before dawn.
Always.
Yes, and we have a small giveaway, a couple of files.
Oh, is there beer in there?
I wish I'd known.
And
Let me put it in. I do this for academic reasons.
Oh,
did it from the
fantastic.
heart, but please accept this as a gift
great.
from me. And then Krishna has a little set of goodies in
Not
here
sure of this
of
t-shirt.
libations.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I always use CMU gear.
And
Size is not too sure.
Royal Scot, sorry. There we go.
I don't have that shirt.
There
I
you
love
go.
that.
You have it in 2 sizes. Not
So-
sure which was correct.
There we go. So we'll have to get you some goodies for Henry and the rest of the kids.
That would be great.
We'll
It was a real treat to be here. Go after your dreams, guys.
And Dr. Evans, small one.
Oh, thank you, Krishna. Thank you so much for organizing this. Listen, thank you all, everybody. And this has been a fabulous
Thank you, guys.
session. We really enjoyed it. We try to do more of these. Krishna's and I are trying to organize them in the fall. And we encourage everybody from CMU. We want this to be second home. You know, we want entrepreneurs to come and share ideas with students. If you're recruiting anytime, our students are the best on the planet.
I agree with that.
Right now, you know, the conjunction of the skills they got from CMU make them the hottest students in the valley. They're getting 3 and 4 offers and people because we not only build things, but we work really hard. And we don't get put off when things don't work out the way we think they're going to do. We make it work. And that's the ethic that CMU has. That's what we all subscribe to. So please don't be strangers. We really would like you to come back and see us. And thank you all for coming to this event tonight. And Krishna, thanks so much for organizing. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Hey, thanks again.
Hey, thank
That was great.